Captain Maya Rodriguez stood barely 5 feet 3 inches in her polished diplomatic uniform, the hands clasped behind her back as she gazed out the viewport of the human vessel Olive Branch. The Zeltharian orbital station loomed ahead like a metallic cancer against the stars, at all sharp angles and intimidating spikes because apparently every alien species had watched the same How to Look Menacing in Space tutorial. "Captain," came the voice of Communications Officer Lisa Park, "the Zeltharians are hailing us. They sound about as friendly as a tax audit." Maya smiled, that particular smile that had gotten her through 3 divorces and a congressional hearing about military spending. "Put them through, Lisa. Let's see what passes for diplomacy in this corner of the galaxy." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Ambassador Thek's core, a 7-foot-tall reptilian nightmare with too many teeth and an ego that could power a small moon. His scales glittered with what Maya assumed were ceremonial scars, though they looked more like bad acne to her untrained eye. "So Thek's core began," his voice like gravel in a blender. "The mighty human empire sends us this tiny creature as their representative. How delightfully insulting." Maya's smile never wavered. "Ambassador Thek's core, I'm Captain Maya Rodriguez. I'm here to discuss peaceful relations between our species." A chorus of what sounded like hyena laughter erupted from behind Thek's core. His entourage, a collection of oversized lizards in fancy armor, seemed to find humanity's choice of diplomat absolutely hilarious. One of them, sporting enough medals to sink a battleship, stepped forward. "This is General Vextar," Thek's core announced with obvious amusement. "He suggests we simply step on you and save ourselves the trouble of negotiations." General Vextar nodded sagely, his massive head bobbing like a metronome set to condescending. "Your species clearly lacks the physical capabilities for meaningful discourse. You appear to be constructed from sticks and optimism." Maya's eyebrow twitched slightly. Behind her, she could hear Lisa muttering something about overgrown iguanas with delusions of grandeur, which was honestly pretty accurate. "I understand your concern," Maya replied smoothly. "Humans do tend to look rather unimpressive at first glance. We're not particularly tall, we don't have natural armor, and our teeth aren't designed to tear through starship hulls." This earned another round of reptilian guffaws. Thek's core leaned forward, his massive frame filling the screen. "Perhaps you would be willing to demonstrate why we should take your pathetic species seriously. We Zeltharians respect strength above all else." "What did you have in mind?" Maya asked, though something in her tone suggested she already knew where this was heading. "A simple test of capability. You, against one of our vessels. Hull integrity, shall we say. If you can make even the smallest dent in our superior technology, we will consider your species worthy of our attention." The Zeltharian delegation erupted in what Maya could only describe as evil cackling, which was honestly pretty impressive coordination for a species that looked like they'd been assembled from spare dinosaur parts. "I accept," Maya said quietly. The laughter stopped abruptly. Even Thek's core looked taken aback. "You accept? Just like that?" Maya's smile grew just a fraction wider, and for the first time something behind her eyes suggested that perhaps the Zeltharians had made a tactical error. "Oh yes, Ambassador. I think a demonstration is exactly what this situation needs." The docking bay of the Zeltharian station was roughly the size of a football stadium. If football stadiums were designed by architects with serious intimidation complexes and unlimited budgets for spike-shaped decorations. Maya stood in the center of it all, looking like a tourist who'd accidentally wandered into a medieval torture convention. "Behold the human champion," General Vextar announced to the gathered crowd of Zeltharian military personnel, but who had apparently decided that watching a tiny human get embarrassed was better entertainment than whatever passed for television in their society. Serve her lack of cybernetic enhancements, her pathetic muscle mass, her complete absence of natural weaponry. Maya examined her fingernails with the casual interest of someone waiting for a bus. "You know, you're absolutely right. We humans are pretty much the galaxy's participation trophy when it comes to physical evolution." From the Olive Branch's communication channel, a distinctly amused voice crackled through Maya's earpiece. "Captain, this is Chief Engineer Tom Patterson. Permission to start making popcorn? Granted, Tom, Maya replied cheerfully. This should be educational. Tom Boom Boom Patterson had earned his nickname through a combination of explosive expertise and an unfortunate incident involving experimental ordnance and the commanding officer's bathroom. He was currently aboard the Olive Branch, presumably monitoring the situation and definitely enjoying himself far too much. Maya, these lizard boys have no idea what they're in for. Tom's voice buzzed with barely contained glee. Want me to start a betting pool? Before Maya could answer, the hangar bay doors groaned open with the kind of dramatic mechanical whining that suggested someone had specifically designed them for maximum intimidation factor. What emerged was the Worldbreaker, a Zeltharian dreadnought roughly the size of a city block and about as subtle as a nuclear explosion in a library. Admiral Krexval stepped out of the ship's boarding ramp, and if Thek's core was intimidating, Krexval was what happened when intimidation went to graduate school and earned a PhD in making people wet themselves. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scars that looked like they'd been applied with artistic precision, and wore enough armor to protect a small planet. Human, Krexval's voice could have been used to demolish buildings. This is the Worldbreaker, pride of the Zeltharian Imperial fleet. Its hull is constructed from reinforced durasteel, 30 inches thick, capable of withstanding direct hits from plasma cannons that could vaporize small moons. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Impressive. Very shiny. Your task, Krexval continued, is simple. Make any mark upon this vessel's hull. Even a scratch will be considered a victory for your species, though we all know such a feat is impossible for something as fragile as a human. The crowd of Zeltharians rumbled with anticipatory amusement, like an audience waiting for the opening act of a particularly good comedy show. And if I succeed? Maya asked. Thek's core stepped forward, his expression suggesting he was enjoying this immensely. If you succeed, which you will not, we will consider formal diplomatic relations with humanity. If you fail, as you certainly will, your species will be classified as a non-threat and ignored indefinitely. Maya stretched her arms above her head, joints popping audibly in the vast hangar. Sounds fair. Just to clarify, there are no rules about how I'm supposed to damage your ship. Admiral Krexval's laugh sounded like an avalanche having a very bad day. Use whatever methods you wish, little human. Weapons, tools, your bare hands if you prefer. The result will be the same. Tom, Maya said softly into her comm. You getting all this? Oh yeah, Captain. I've got visual, audio, and I'm pretty sure I can smell their overconfidence from here. Want me to place any last-minute bets? Maya began rolling her shoulders, a movement so casual that most of the Zeltharians missed it entirely. Those who did notice probably assumed she was having some kind of minor seizure. No bets, Tom. But you might want to start recording. I have a feeling this is going to be the kind of thing that ends up in training videos. Maya walked slowly around the Worldbreaker, hands behind her back like a professor examining a particularly interesting specimen. The assembled Zeltharians watched with the kind of patient amusement typically reserved for watching small children attempt to move furniture. You know, Maya began conversationally, there's something most species don't understand about human evolution. They look at us and see what you see, soft, small, relatively weak by galactic standards. And they're absolutely right. General Vextar snorted, which sounded like a steam engine having respiratory problems. At least you're honest about your inferiority. Oh, we're definitely inferior, Maya agreed, running her hand along the ship's hull with genuine appreciation. Compared to most species, humans are basically made of wet tissue paper and bad decisions. We can't breathe underwater, we can't fly, we can't even see properly in the dark. By all rights, we should have been extinct before we figured out fire. Tom, she continued into her comm, want to explain to our new friends why we're still here? Tom's voice crackled with educational enthusiasm. Oh boy, do I ever. You see, folks, humans have what we like to call design features that other species mistake for bugs. Take our adrenal system, for example. Maya nodded, still walking around the ship. The fight-or-flight response. Most civilized species evolved past it eons ago. They developed logic, reason, sophisticated conflict resolution. Very sensible. Very boring, Tom added helpfully. Ambassador Thek's core was beginning to look slightly confused, which on a 7-foot lizard was somehow even more unsettling than his usual expression of smug superiority. What exactly are you talking about, human? Maya stopped walking and turned to face the assembled crowd. Well, you see, while other species were evolving elegant solutions to survival challenges, humans kept our emergency backup system. A little biological panic button that turns off the logical parts of our brain and turns up everything else. Something in Maya's posture was changing, though it was subtle enough that most of the Zeltharians missed it. Her breathing had deepened slightly, her stance widened just a fraction. It's really quite fascinating from an evolutionary perspective, Maya continued, and her voice had dropped half an octave. When a human feels threatened, our body floods itself with chemicals. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. Our heart rate increases, our blood pressure spikes, our pain tolerance goes through the roof. And the best part, Tom's voice was positively gleeful now, is that all those civilized species who evolved past this response? They forgot what it looked like when it activated. Admiral Krexvol was starting to look less amused and more concerned, though he was clearly trying to maintain his air of superiority. This is all very interesting, human, but theoretical biology will not help you damage our vessel. Maya's smile was beginning to take on a different quality entirely. Oh, Admiral, we're well past theoretical at this point. Her pupils were dilating noticeably now, and the muscles in her arms and shoulders were visibly expanding as her cardiovascular system shifted into emergency mode. The casual, diplomatic Maya Rodriguez was still there, but something much older and considerably less civilized was waking up behind her eyes. You see, the thing about human adrenaline, Maya said, her voice now carrying an undertone that made several Zeltharians instinctively step backward, is that it doesn't just make us faster or stronger. It makes us temporarily insane in very specific, very practical ways. General Vextar's tail was twitching nervously. Perhaps we should reconsider the terms of this demonstration. Maya's laugh was still perfectly pleasant, but there was something predatory lurking underneath it now. Oh no, General. You wanted to see what humans are capable of. It would be terribly rude of me to disappoint you now. The transformation was subtle at first, like watching water come to a boil. Maya's breathing had shifted from the controlled rhythm of diplomacy to something deeper, more primal. Her muscles weren't just expanding, they were reconfiguring, tendons tightening like cables under load. Tom, Maya said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the Zeltharians' scales twitch involuntarily. Remind our friends what human adrenaline does to our strength capacity. Oh, gladly, Tom's voice practically vibrated with excitement. Under normal circumstances, humans can only access about 60% of their muscle capacity. Safety feature, you see. Prevents us from tearing our own tendons off the bone. Maya approached a support beam from the docking bay's construction. A solid steel girder about 6 inches thick that was definitely not meant to be handled by anything smaller than heavy machinery. But when the adrenaline kicks in, Maya continued, wrapping her hands around the beam like she was picking up a baseball bat, those safety features get temporarily disabled. She squeezed. The steel beam crumpled like aluminum foil. The hangar fell silent except for the sound of several Zeltharian jaws hitting the deck plating. That's impossible, Admiral Krexvol whispered, though his voice carried clearly in the suddenly quiet space. Maya examined the crushed beam with academic interest, as if she'd just completed a particularly satisfying crossword puzzle. Actually, it's just physics. Humans are basically biological hydraulic systems running on controlled chemical explosions. We just usually keep the pressure settings on safe rather than oh god why. General Vextar was backing away slowly, his earlier confidence evaporating like water on a hot plate. Perhaps we should postpone this demonstration until... Until what? Maya interrupted, and her smile was no longer diplomatic at all. It was the smile of something that had spent 100,000 years climbing to the top of the food chain and wasn't particularly interested in climbing back down. Her pupils were now fully dilated black circles surrounded by irises that seemed to be glowing with their own light. The polite Captain Rodriguez was still there, but she was sharing headspace with something considerably older and infinitely more dangerous. "Until you can figure out how to back out of this without losing face?" Maya asked, tilting her head with predatory curiosity. "I'm afraid that option expired about the time you started making jokes about human weakness." She began walking toward the Worldbreaker, her movements now carrying the fluid grace of something designed by evolution specifically for violence. "You see, the other thing about human adrenaline is that it comes with a complete personality override. All those nice civilized thoughts about diplomacy and peaceful coexistence, they get filed away under deal with later." Ambassador Thek's corps was frantically gesturing to his security detail, but they seemed to be experiencing the same problem as gazelles who'd suddenly realized they were in a tiger enclosure. "Guards, stop her." Maya paused, turning to face the approaching Zeltharian soldiers with the kind of casual interest a house cat might show a group of mice who just volunteered for a biology experiment. "Gentlemen," she said pleasantly, "I really wouldn't recommend that course of action." The lead guard, a particularly large specimen carrying what appeared to be some kind of energy weapon, raised his rifle. Maya moved. What happened next defied several laws of physics and at least 2 diplomatic protocols. Maya covered the 20-foot distance between herself and the guard in what appeared to be a single step, plucked the rifle from his hands like she was taking a toy away from a child, and bent the barrel into a shape that could generously be described as abstract art. "Tom," Maya said conversationally, "are you still recording this?" "Are you kidding?" Tom's voice was positively giddy. "This is going straight into the Why Humans Don't Do First Contact Anymore training files." Maya handed the destroyed rifle back to its former owner with the kind of polite courtesy typically associated with returning borrowed pencils. "Now then, Admiral Krexvol, I believe we had an agreement about your ship's hull integrity." Maya suited up in what could generously be called a spacesuit, though by galactic standards it looked more like a jogging outfit with a fishbowl helmet. No advanced life support systems, no powered exoskeleton, no artificial gravity generators, just basic atmosphere recycling and radiation shielding. The Zeltharians watched this process with the fascination of scientists observing a particularly determined lemming. Captain Admiral Krexvol called out as Maya sealed her helmet, "Surely you don't intend to work on the hull in vacuum. The cold alone would kill most species." Maya's voice came through the comm system with that same unsettling cheerfulness. "Oh, Admiral, you'd be surprised what the human body can handle when it stops worrying about things like self-preservation and logical behavior." She cycled through the airlock with the casual confidence of someone going for a walk in the park. The Worldbreaker hung before her in the void, its hull gleaming with the kind of menace that typically required a defense contractor and a budget the size of a small planet's GDP. "Tom, you getting good visuals on this?" "Crystal clear, Maya. Also, I should mention, the Zeltharian comm channels are going absolutely insane right now. Apparently their ship's sensors are having trouble categorizing you as anything other than small, aggressive, and defying several known laws of physics." Maya approached the hull and placed her gloved hands against the durasteel plating. To an outside observer, it looked like someone trying to push over a skyscraper with their bare hands. To Maya, who was currently running on a biochemical cocktail that would have killed most other species, it felt like touching something that had personally insulted her mother. "The thing about durasteel," Maya said conversationally as she began to apply pressure, "is that it's incredibly strong in the ways engineers expect it to be strong." The hull began to creak. Inside the Worldbreaker, alarms started going off. Not the gentle chimes that indicated minor system malfunctions, but the kind of full-throated shrieking that suggested reality had filed a formal complaint with the universe's management. "Unfortunately for the engineers," Maya continued, her voice now carrying the kind of focus typically associated with people attempting to lift cars off trapped children, "they designed it to withstand energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and gravitational stresses." The durasteel began to buckle. "They didn't design it," Maya grunted, her hands now buried wrist-deep in what had previously been impenetrable armor plating, "to withstand a human having a really bad day." The hull began to tear. Tom's voice was reaching levels of excitement typically associated with sports announcers during overtime. Maya, the Zeltharian damage control teams are reporting hull breaches on decks 12 through 18. Also, their chief engineer just used what I'm pretty sure is the lizard equivalent of a very bad word. Maya had found her rhythm now, systematically peeling back layers of durasteel like she was opening the universe's most stubborn can of sardines. Her movements were precise, methodical, and absolutely terrifying to anyone who understood exactly how impossible what she was doing should have been. Admiral Krexval, Maya called out over the comm. You might want to evacuate your crew from the forward sections. I'm about to do something that your insurance probably doesn't cover. She planted her feet against the hull, grabbed 2 handfuls of the ship's superstructure, and pulled. The Worldbreaker, pride of the Zeltharian Imperial fleet, capable of withstanding the fury of entire star systems, groaned like a dying whale and began to come apart. Holy Mother of Orbital Mechanics, Tom whispered in awe. Maya, are you actually tearing that ship in half? Maya paused in her work, breathing heavily but grinning like a child who'd just figured out how to take apart their most complicated toy. Not yet, Tom. But give me another minute or two. 27 minutes later, Maya floated serenely in space next to what had once been the Worldbreaker, and was now more accurately described as the Worldbreaker, and also this other bit over here. Her breathing had returned to normal, her pupils had contracted back to merely human dimensions, and she was examining her fingernails again with the casual interest of someone who'd just finished a mildly strenuous yoga session. The silence on all communication channels was profound enough to be considered its own form of art. Finally, Ambassador Thexcor's voice crackled through the comm system, though it sounded like he was speaking from the bottom of a very deep well while having an existential crisis. That was, he paused, clearly struggling with concepts that his species' language hadn't been designed to handle, unexpected. Maya cycled back through the airlock, humming what sounded suspiciously like a human lullaby. As she removed her helmet, she looked exactly like the same pleasant diplomat who'd arrived a few hours earlier, except for the fact that everyone present had just watched her dismantle a dreadnought with her bare hands. Gentlemen, Maya said brightly, I believe we were discussing diplomatic relations? The treaty signing took place in what could only be described as record time. The Zeltharian delegation, led by a thoroughly traumatized Ambassador Thexcor, agreed to every single term the humans proposed, that, including several they hadn't actually proposed but which the aliens assumed they must have forgotten to mention. Captain Rodriguez, Admiral Krexval asked quietly as the paperwork was being finalized, may I ask what would have happened if we had refused your diplomatic overtures entirely? Maya considered this with the thoughtful expression of someone trying to remember where they'd left their car keys. Oh, probably nothing too dramatic. We would have made some polite excuses, returned to Earth, and filed a report recommending that humanity avoid contact with your species indefinitely. That's all? Well, Maya added cheerfully, we also would have made sure to mark your star systems as potentially hostile on all our navigation charts. You know, just in case any of our exploration vessels happen to be passing through the area. The implications of this statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The idea of more humans wandering around the galaxy in their deceptively fragile ships was apparently enough to make several Zeltharian military officers quietly excuse themselves to update their wills. Tom, Maya said as they prepared to depart, how are you feeling about today's diplomatic mission? Tom's voice carried a note of profound disappointment. Well, it was definitely educational. But I have to admit, I'm a little bummed that I didn't get to blow anything up. I had some really creative explosive solutions prepared. There's always next time, Tom. Oh, please let there be a next time. As the olive branch departed the Zeltharian station, Maya stood once again at the viewport, watching the stars wheel past with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just successfully completed a particularly challenging crossword puzzle. The thing about humans, she reflected, was that they'd spent most of their evolutionary history being prey animals on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. This had produced a species that was remarkably good at two things, appearing harmless right up until the moment they weren't, and finding creative solutions to problems that other species considered impossible. It was, Maya thought, probably for the best that most of the galaxy continued to underestimate them. After all, there was something to be said for maintaining the element of surprise. Besides, politeness was such a useful camouflage for the kind of controlled insanity that had carried humanity from the African savanna to the stars. Why would she want to ruin that? The olive branch jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a considerably more enlightened Zeltharian Empire, and what would eventually become known throughout the galaxy as the day we learned why humans smile so much. It was, by all accounts, a very successful diplomatic mission.